Okay, so let's take a look at this. This is a heavy duty mobile miter saw stand from Chicago Electric. You know, pick it up at Harbor Freight. 63409 is the part number. If you've ever had a miter saw, you definitely want to have a miter saw stand. It's night and day. This little stand is a good stand, but it is lacking in a few features. It's not a high quality, which is something you kind of expect from Harbor Freight, but there's just a few modifications I've found, and you can greatly improve this stand. So I have had one of these, and the whole time I had it, I'm gonna walk over here to my old one, and I had a name brand stand, but it was so heavy. It was an older one, and I bought this. I bought the Chicago Electric saw. I actually sold my big DeWalt 12-inch miter saw, and for what I sold it for, I was able to buy this little 10-inch sliding miter saw, which has a longer travel because it slides, whereas the 12-inch was fixed, and I don't need to cut through 4 inches on a miter saw, so the 10-inch does just fine cutting through 2x4s or 2x6s, but I like that it can cut a full 12-inch board, whereas the 12-inch DeWalt could only cut about a 10-inch board. However, now excuse me if my filming is not good. My wife took my tripod and my camera stand, so I'll do my best here. But the one thing that I have had problems with ever since I bought this is when I would put a piece of board up on here and I want it to lock it in. Oh, the stand right here, you've got to twist side to side here. So, okay, excuse me. So I get that locked in to where now that's not that way. But then if you need it to move it in or out, now this hole, right here at this joint where the pieces slide in, there's a good 1/16 of an inch slack, and it's the same up here. So to try to, you know, I mean, you can see just how much that's rocking around. So when you're trying to lock a board down and you want it to sit flat across the saw, the thing's flopping everywhere. So what I have done is I put in a spacers made from a Harbor Freight or a Pittsburgh ruler I got from Harbor Freight. So now if I tighten this down, loosen it up, you see there's no side to side movement. Loosen this up. I've got a little bit of front to back, but whenever you tighten that, the front to back automatically goes away. But the side to side that was there before is almost, I mean, it's barely, according to this, across this 10-12 inches, it may only move a 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch. So to me, that is going to be a huge improvement. All right, so again, the shop is a mess because I'm working on some other projects, and I wasn't planning on this, but the old stand broke on me. So I've been thinking about doing this modification, and I wanted to go ahead and, even if it's a crappy video, make a quick video, because I think this is greatly going to make this stand a whole lot better. I mean, we're talking moving it in from a crappy, cheap thing that's kind of, you know, maybe if you use it once a year, good, to almost a everyday professional stand. Alright, so I don't have time to do a bunch of video editing on this clip, so I'm going to be doing some pausing and try to show you the highlights so that if you want to do this, you can actually do it yourself. One thing I noticed is these screws right here, those were tightened up from the factory, and on this one here, they have worked their way loose, and I don't know if that contributed to this breaking. It wasn't a piece of square tubing, it was just some little pieces of sheet metal that they had welded. You can see how it had busted, and that's why I had to get I mean, it was just not a real good weld across there, but you get what you pay for. So I'm putting Loctite on the new screws, and I'm just showing you the reason why. Okay, so we're going to take these 3 screws. There's a nut on the inside. Loosen the nuts off. Pull those 3 screws out, and then this little piece of plastic just comes out. Then the whole tube comes out. So you have these rivets, one on either side, that keeps the rod from coming out too far. It wants to keep about 10 inches inside of this tube. And then you've got this little guide here on the end that's also got a rivet. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to drill those rivets out so that we can slide this piece off the end. Okay, so now that we've got this plastic piece off, what I have here is it was a 40-inch aluminum ruler. It was a Pittsburgh brand. Let's see, I got another piece of one over here. The Pittsburgh 40-inch ruler, item number 69366. So I had this from where I just built this new table on my table saw, and I inlaid the rulers so that I wouldn't have to measure on my slide here. So I had these pieces left over, and I found if you cut a 2-inch piece, and then we're going to mount it right inside there, and it works perfect to take up the slack. Okay, so now I've got my 2-inch piece of ruler, drilled the hole in it. I used a countersink. I've got a 1/2 inch, just because that's the shortest they had, of a 632 machine bolt. So it goes right down up inside there, that way it's flush. If you look at it from the top, you know, the screw itself doesn't stick up. I drilled the hole in the side and the top, so we're going to put that together. Okay, so now I've got my little pieces of ruler inside. I've got them bolted up. This time, I don't know, I guess because I'm trying to video it, we'll put it together with one hand, trying to you know, do all this without my tripod. It just, I didn't get them quite smooth, but that doesn't matter. It's just a spacer in there. I did, however, when I went to put this together, the other one was a little snug, so I just took a rubber hammer and tapped it. It went in, and it's working fine. This one must have been over just a little bit more, not centered, because when I went to beat it in, the edges of the ruler caught. So I don't know if you can see that, if it was focused. I just took the file. I didn't take any off of the width, but I just kind of angled it, just filed down one edge, gave it a little taper, and that way it would fit, because what was happening was the piece of the ruler was catching right on the edge of this pipe here, and it ended up cracking the little plastic piece. But I've got the old table over there that's no good, so I just pulled it off of that one. This piece that was riveted in, I just happened to have this little bolt laying around. It's had like a self-tapping thread on the end of it, perfect length. So I just ran it in. It was the perfect size for the hole. It cut its own threads and attached itself. I could put a little bolt or a rivet right there to keep it from sliding out, but that's fine. I know not to slide it in too far. So now it just slides all back together, and then I need to put my 3 bolts in here, and we'll be ready to work on the other. So to finish up for the upright, I did one more little piece of that ruler, screwed it on just one side. Now they have tried to take up the space by punching in, but this little punch in isn't enough. It's still very sloppy, as you've seen. It wobbles back and forth. So it does move the holder, so if you try to put in the ruler and leave that punch in, then it's too tight. So what I had to do is come in on the inside here with a file, and you can see where I filed that smooth so that there's enough room for it to go in and out. So here's the other side I had did on the other one. It's just got the little screw right there. I can loosen that up, and see it's still stuck enough, you know, with it being loose, but yet, you know, just give it a little bit of a push, you know, and then it goes right in and right out. So that's the way I like it, a little tight. I haven't put any oil in that one yet, but a little piece of oil, and should be good. So now everything's nice and tight the way it should be. You know, this can be loose and then it doesn't move around, but you can slide it. It's nice and snug, and this stays straight across even with the table, and so your wood sits nice and smooth on there. Sorry again for this video. Like I say, my wife's got my tripod, and I know it's a crappy video, but while I was putting this together, I wanted to go ahead and shoot this because I've been thinking about needing to do something like this for a long time, because that was the one part of this stand that really made it a poor quality stand and not recommend it. Since it broke, I had to get the other one, and so while I had the two right here, I could work on the two together, and it just so happened all these little pieces came together. It took me, once I figured out how I was going to do it, about 30 minutes. One of the hardest things is the screw down inside there is hard to get to, so I just took a little pair of vice grips with a screwdriver tip on it, and was able to reach inside there, put the little screw bit into the screw to hold it while I tightened up the nut on the other side. Once I got that figured out and got everything going, it actually only took me about 30 minutes to do the one side, and it probably would not have taken me near about that long had my shop been somewhat cleaned up. So I hope it helps. If not, don't watch it, but if it does, you know, I'm happy for you.